Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about, Johnny Mac. The people who are reaching out, they have missed the best Philadelphia Eagles football show and podcast on the planet, and we were not here for the last couple of days. I hope you guys had a great Christmas holiday, happy Hanukkah, a happy Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate. I hope you had a great holiday with your family. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Football Friday, my friend?
I'm doing well. Got to get back into it. Hope everybody had a nice holiday season, a little bit of a break. Netflix football, that went pretty well for the league, not the games as usual, but so that went pretty well. But they've taken over Christmas too. So sorry, NBA.
Yeah, sorry, LeBron. Sorry, NBA. You guys are on the back burner officially. The NFL is just king, John. It really is. It's amazing how king it is.
Although big Sixers win. Congratulations to the Sixers.
You're not throwing in a Sixers this morning. We've been gone for 2 days, and we're starting this sucker off on the Sixers.
Why not? Because the NFL games were so bad. I did tune over to the Sixers for a little bit, and they won a game against a good team, which is rare. So there you go. Hat tip to the Sixers.
And another shitty game in the NFL last night. The ratings, I'm sure, will be huge, but another crappy game. The Seahawks win that one last night. John, we got a lot of stuff to talk about in Eagle land coming into this game. Let's start with this Eagles and Cowboys game and just where we are in the injury front. We haven't updated the people in a couple of days here on Birds 365. Looks like no Jalen Hurts. Is that all but confirmed here for this game this weekend?
Well, certainly not confirmed. You know how the Eagles do business. But,
I
would not expect to see Jalen Hurts out there. On Sunday, still in the concussion protocol, hasn't been able to get on the field, estimated not to be on the field Wednesday. They did have their typical Wednesday walkthrough. They moved that up to Tuesday on Christmas Eve. He obviously didn't participate in that. So, if he's out there, you would have a quarterback with basically no on-field prep for the week, unless he can get out there for a little bit today, which is a scaled-back practice. So very unlikely. I mean, but the Eagles are the Eagles, and they're going to slow play it as long as they possibly can. I imagine the final status report will come out this afternoon, late this afternoon. They'll probably rule them out at that point. So you're going to have to go through the normal Nick Sirianni rigmarole this morning about, well, we'll see. We still got a little bit of time. That kind of crap that is annoying to all end, but it is what it is. He thinks it's a competitive advantage. I think it's silly, but he's in charge of the Eagles, so they do obviously what he wants. But the point is, if this whole nonsense of you got to be preparing for two quarterbacks. No, you don't. You're prepared for the starter. And if you're prepared for the starter, you're prepared for the backup. That's how everybody in the league handles it. So, sorry, Nick, it's bullshit.
Yeah, right. If you're prepared for a better talent, you're going to be naturally prepared for a lesser talented player. John, quarterback one's not the only concern, though, here. Quarterback two as well. Kenny Pickett was a little bit banged up. What's the update on him, my friend?
Yeah, Kenny's going to play. He's going to play with a black jacket. It says he always wears it anyway, so a little bit more padding. That's about the only difference. And yeah, he got banged up his ribs. There were people noticed who were at the Washington game that Tanner McKee was warming up pretty significantly at one point when Kenny got banged up. Didn't understand the rules. He was the emergency quarterback. You just can't put him in the game like you normally would. If you're on the game day roster, you have to rule both quarterbacks out, which obviously was the case with Jalen Hurts, but you would have had to rule Kenny Pickett out of the game. So it's not like he could have played for a play and then Kenny Pickett could have came back in. So I think a lot of people misunderstood that. So it was somewhat concerning in the moment that if he would have been down to the one quarterback, but yeah, for those hoping to see Tanner McKee, it's not close. I don't know where this narrative came from. Inside the building, Kenny Pickett's the backup. They like Tanner McKee as a developmental quarterback.
Will he be the second quarterback this week, or will they go with Ian Book?
No.
Yeah,
Tanner McKee
Ian
will
Book
be
will
the
be the
second
third, right?
quarterback. Yeah, and most likely Ian will be. No, they might even not because you're not going to. You can elevate him from the practice squad and do name him the emergency quarterback, which is kind of a waste. But we'll see how they handle it. You're always a play away. It tends to happen quickly. I mean, there's tremendous durability with starting quarterbacks in this league for the most part, and it's shocking when they do get hurt how much the backups get hurt quickly, and then all of a sudden you're down to the third quarterback and even the fourth quarterback, and you're really scrambling. So
Right.
those guys are, for the most part, they're unbelievably durable. The starting quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah, and Pickett played 3 quarters, and he's more banged up this year than Jalen has been all year, outside of obviously the concussion that he took. So, John, I think top priority for the Eagles right now. I know that obviously you got a big game this weekend. You got to clinch up, hold that second, get that second seed, secure the NFC East, but you got to get Jalen Hurts healthy for the playoffs, man. All that other stuff is icing on the cake. You could be the second seed, you could be the first seed for all I care. You don't have Jalen Hurts healthy, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and he's going to be fine. I mean, I don't want to downplay it, but I am going to downplay it. It's not a normal injury, and by normal injury, I mean it's not a sprained knee where it's legitimately a 2 to 4 week injury, and you're trying to get back on the field as quickly as possible because you need to win a game, like Geno Smith has done in Seattle, who probably shouldn't be playing, but he's got to because of the situation they're in. He's in the concussion protocol. He doesn't have a long history of concussion. I've seen him twice. People have seen him on video. He's fine. He's got it just takes time to get through this
Right.
protocol. And it's probably going to cost the Eagles a week more than likely. But it's not like there's a danger of him not being ready for the playoffs. So yeah, I wouldn't be. The broken left finger is a bigger deal from that perspective, and that's sort of a silver lining of taking a week off to let that thing settle down a
Right.
little
Jalen's
bit.
going to get himself a little bit more healthy in the end of the year here.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not concerned about him missing the playoffs or anything of that nature.
Good stuff there, John. Let's talk about the Cowboys a little bit. Now they have ruled out CD Lamb for the rest of the year. So, and already
They're not playing the game, Mike
depleted,
McCarthy.
and
You got to
already
make the
depleted
Eagles prepare
Cowboys
for
team.
CD Lamb. You could have made him prepare for CD Lamb. Now you gave him off the hook.
Is that bad gamesmanship by the Dallas Cowboys compared to how the Eagles do business?
I guess if you want to put it that way, but what even in that instance, and obviously that's their best offensive player by a wide margin, skill position player at the present time. I mean, what do you think? The Eagles are not going to prepare? All right, CD's done. So
How are the Cowboys going to even win this game? I mean, you got Cooper Rush, and now you don't have CD Lamb out there. I mean,
they got Brandon
unless the
Cooks back.
Philadelphia Eagles special teams falls apart and Cavante Turpin can take a couple back for a touchdown, I don't see how the Cowboys are going to move the ball in this game.
Well, he has a big deal, by the way, Cavante Turpin.
Yeah,
So that is, but again, if you're worried about a kick returner, you're probably not prepared to win. And they use him a little bit on offense and manufacture touches. And Brandon Cooks is back, so he's a veteran. Jake Ferguson's a good tight end. Rico Dowdle's been having a good end to the season, so they have a little bit of a better running game. And Cooper Rush is more comfortable, but yeah, they're limited. let's call it what it is. They're very, very limited offensively, and their one scary player is now done for the season. So, I mean, that's what happens. The Cowboys have decent talent. I know Eagles fans don't want to hear that, but there's no Dak Prescott there. Now there's no CD Lamb. Zach Martin's going to the Hall of Fame. He's not playing. DeMarcus Lawrence is out. He's been out. They lost DeMarion Obershon, is the best young player, a couple of weeks ago. Trayvon Diggs is out. They did get Micah back. That was the only positive. And you know how the Eagles feel about Micah Parsons. Cam Jurgens was talking about yesterday. They're just in awe of the guy. So I know that upsets Eagles fans as well. But those are Eagles players, not us. So, you know, they're an NFL team. There's always good players, but they're very limited. It's similar to what I said about Pittsburgh, and that is kind of borne out over the past couple of weeks. Pittsburgh's so limited offensively. I never bought into them. Same thing here with Dallas. They're so limited offensively. I can't buy into their little spike here at the end of the season.
They are playing hard, though. You got to give them credit for that. They played hard last week, and they are playing hard. Now, they had CD Lamb, so we're going to see what they look like this weekend. But don't go to sleep yet, everybody. But it does look like this will be a, I had a comment here. Let's pull that up, Johnny Mac. Brian Fleming going to look like Army Navy in this game with Cooper Rush and no weapons, and the Eagles are going to have Kenny Pickett out there. So we'll see how the game plays out. All good on the Eagles receivers and everything like that. All good. Across the injury report for the Birds otherwise?
Yeah, the only one I would keep an eye on is Nakobe Dean, who has been limited. Actually was estimated as not practicing on Christmas Day, was limited yesterday. So he's dealing with a bit of an abdomen, which is something, if you think about the communication issues that have been so good all season, a little bit off kilter in Washington. So he's the green dot. He's that guy. And if that is affected, whether he's going to play, but is he going to be limited? Does he have to come out at times? So something to keep an eye on.
Good stuff there. John, one thing we'll talk about real quick. Rest in peace to Bill Berge, former Eagle back in the day. John, any good stories, anything you know about Bill Berge you can share with the great listeners here on Birds 365?
No, I don't really know Bill. Obviously, long before my time covering the Eagles, and he hasn't been around since I've been back, but obviously an all-time great player. I mean, that's all. And I'm a big fan of history of the game. And he was, again, different type of linebacker. If you talk to Vic Fangio or Bobby King or somebody like that, old school linebacker, 5-time All-Pro, tough, physical. You can't play that way now. So, if you were to ask Vic or Bobby, who does Bill Berge remind you of today? They'd say the same thing as they said with Dick Butkus, they don't play like Bill Berge. I mean, he was a just really physical, really intimidating type player in the middle of that defense. Back in the days, for those who don't know, in the NFC East, I mean, this is how far back it goes. The Cardinals were once in the NFC East and St. Louis, which made no sense. But Conrad Dobler was a very good player, but regarded as the most dirty player of his time. And he and Berge would often have, battles, different time in the NFL. But and everyone who did know Bill talked about, it's ironic because he lived in the area, but he was the nicest guy off the field and just a bad guy on the field, which is a good thing.
Right. That is a good thing. It's kind of reminds me of B. Dawkins, 2-time AP, first team All-Pro, Johnny Mac, 5 Pro Bowls. I think all of his accolades, maybe except for one Pro Bowl, came with the Philadelphia Eagles. So obviously a historic player for the Eagles, and we hope he rest in peace, and we pray for his family that they take it all and can handle the loss of Bill Berge. So rest in peace to Bill Berge here, John. Another bit of Eagle news: Nick Sirianni and a Zach Ertz dispute. Now, I was off the grid, Johnny Mac. Let me tell you, when I go off the grid. All right, I was off on Christmas. We have our family Christmas on Christmas Day, and then the day after Christmas is all of my cousins and all that, and everybody, all my extended family, aunts and uncles gets together. So I was off the grid, and I open up Twitter, and I'm like, what the hell is going on now with Nick Sirianni and Zach Ertz? What can you tell me, John? What can you fill me in on with Zach Ertz and Nick Sirianni?
Yeah, they had a little dust up after the game, and it wasn't much. I mean, video eventually came out. A couple people in Washington. Clearly, Nick said something to Zach that Zach didn't like, but Zach spoke yesterday and really scaled it back. Nick scaled it back as well, didn't do it as well as Zach did. Um, so it's one of those things after the game where Nick's upset after losing for the first time in 3 months, and I guess they're giving it to each other a little bit. And he said, "Well, you only had one catch or something like that," and Zach took exception to it. It's a bad look for the head coach of the football team. That's the only thing I'll say. Especially on the day, think of it from this perspective. And I don't want to overstate it, but I think it's important because you want to be preaching discipline to guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson this week and Jalen Carter, and you're acting like a knucklehead, player after the game because you lost the game for the first time in 3 months. I get the frustration, but there's got to be a level of cachet or gravitas as a head coach in this league. I mean, this is not the first time. This is not the first time. And what do you want to call it? Sportsmanship. And I know people make fun of that now, but whatever. They always had the Lady Bing trophy in hockey, sportsmanship. That you especially in times of adversity, you got to be a head coach. And not to mention Zach Ertz's reputation as a player, as a person in the community.
As a professional. I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. I mean, Nick, you got to be a professional. You're a professional head football coach. Exactly. Act like it. I don't understand this type of stuff from Nick.
Exactly. So, on a week when you're trying to stress, CJ better handling the line or Jalen better handling the line, this is, and then you do something like that, which wasn't, it wasn't that big of a deal. They quickly made up, but still, you're the head coach. You got to set the example for the player, not getting a dust up with a player.
Not just a player, John. I'm talking about a guy who contributed to the Eagles' only Super Bowl in history.
He's an Eagles Hall of Famer, eventually Eagles legend. Yeah, that part of it just adds on to it. But
I mean, it's one thing if you criticize, somebody that has no connection, no relation to the team. Okay, fine. All right, you had a little dust up. Maybe he was chirping over on the sideline.
Well, yeah, and that's partially what I'm saying, because they knew each other, because they were close, right, and they probably feel the need they have to go up to say things. And if it were somebody else, it probably wouldn't even happen. So that factors into it. But I'm just saying, as a head coach, blanket assessment for every coach in this league, they shouldn't be doing shit like that. So that's it, period. End of sentence. And it's happened before. Guys getting fights, coaches getting fights, because it's very emotional and frustrating when you lose these games. But, again, this is not the first time, whether it's taunting fans or jumping up on benches and screaming. I mean, you open the door. It's an unforced error. I talk about unforced errors a lot, because what if the Eagles lose this game and they're undisciplined? Do you think that's not going to be brought back up?
Oh, it'll be brought back up, and it should. I'm already wondering. I mean, we talked about discipline a little bit last week. We talked about the Jalen Carter issues. We talked about, as you mentioned, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Well, the head of the snake is undisciplined. Why are we expecting the entire unit, the team, to be disciplined when the guy running the ship and leading the charge is not disciplined?
And more importantly, when you're in that team meeting talking about it, why is anybody going to take you seriously?
Exactly. That's it. That's an even better point.
That's, so that's the problem. But I don't want to say it's a big problem or anything, because I don't think it is, but
yeah, but I do think, John, I do think some of that stuff is going to matter even more when you get to the crunch time moments. These are the questions, John, that people have on Nick, and they're fair. These are where people say, well, what's he going to do when the moment, when the lights are the brightest, or when the playoffs come and you have a tougher opponent and you have to be rational and logical and make the right decisions in the heat of the moment. I mean, he can't even handle seeing Zach Ertz after a loss.
Well, I'm not going to say the questions aren't valid. They're valid. And I'm saying this is the unforced error part of it. I'm not too worried about the actual impact of it. That's what I'm saying. But I understand the questions are
Yeah.
valid. But if you ask me my opinion, I'm not going to say it's a big deal because I don't think it's that big of a deal. Um, Other than it's a pattern, and he's making life more difficult for himself, which I think is silly. So, you know,
It's
I would say
100%
tone
silly.
it down. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say tone it down.
Yeah, it's 100% silly, and I think it brings in it does bring real it certainly brings questions for me. I mean, I don't know if it's the way I was raised or what, but discipline is one of the most important things you can have in life, and Nick doesn't seem to have any of it, John. He doesn't seem to have any of it. Now he's a great coach. He's got a great winning percentage. I get all that. It does seem like the team plays for him. They ride for him. They love him. But if you're not disciplined yourself, how can you expect Jalen Carter to be, or CJ Gardner, or any of these other guys that that play with a little bit of fire? Which, by the way, I think is a good thing. I don't think that fire is a
Well,
bad
that's
thing.
kind of the point. I
It's got to
mean,
be
we
harnessed.
just talked about Bill Berge and Conrad Dilbler. I mean, football's a little bit different than other sports because it is a violent sport and violence is encouraged. Whether it's Andrew Sandejo wearing "Make Football Violent" again, or I've heard a couple people bring it up this week. Landon Dickerson hyping up the team, talking about choosing violence.
Yeah.
Now, if you're outside, if you're a cultured person, if you're in the halls of Harvard or higher education, and you're listening to these morons talk about violence, it looks like, hey, that's football. That's football.
Yeah.
And guess what? I don't want a disciplined defensive tackle. I want Jalen Carter. You know, a lot of it's a tightrope. You don't want to go too far, but yeah. So that's the part of football I think people don't understand. Like you need Jalen Carter's to win. You need C.J. Gardner Johnson's to
That
win.
mean mentality, I 100% agree with. But I do think there's a point of balancing that with having a right
Well, there
offset with
is,
that. Yeah.
but it's not that easy. And you can't say, "Hey, be a wild man," but then tone it back. And you especially can't say it. I mean, that's difficult to do in the best of circumstances, but it's even more difficult when you yourself are not acting disciplined. That's my point. It's even harder to get them to follow that tightrope or try to follow that tightrope if you're not doing it yourself. And I'm sure he took accountability, but blah blah. But stop doing it. Simple. Stop doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of times the Philadelphia Eagles, John, in the last couple of years, for all the winning that we've had, the amount of times that we've been in the news because of something dumb that Nick Sirianni has done is flat out laughable for an NFL head coach. That's the reality. I think that's the God's honest truth. We've had multiple occasions this year where we're a national headline because our clown head coach or our coach who can't keep it together, is drawing attention. I just don't think that's a good thing overall for a team. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I do think there's some good stuff about Nick that other people don't see, but I think it's a joke. I mean, Zach Ertz is a guy that won a Super Bowl here. Nick
Well,
Sirianni technically
and
hasn't won
that's what I'm
shit here.
talking about. Now, you saw one of the worst coaches, honestly, I've ever saw last night. I don't know if anybody saw it, but the Bears interim coach Thomas Brown. He's not a head coach. He's not prepared to be a head coach. I mean, it's the worst clock management team I've ever seen. It's the quarterback's not prepared for anything, and he's in a difficult circumstance. That's why you never fire your head coach in season. They had a bad head coach to begin with, but there's a lot of bad coaches in this league. Nick is not one of them. He creates these problems for himself. To me, that's the biggest problem. It's like, why are you doing that? Why are you creating these problems for yourself? That to me is the biggest problem. And that there's unintended consequences for that, and the fact that it creates more pressure. And, now they got to be on their P's and Q's. God forbid there's an undisciplined moment because people are going to bring it up. It's not needed. If you just show some discipline as the head coach of a National Football League team. But as far as between the lines, he's a very good head coach.
John, they spoke about it. What did Nick have to say about the altercation with Zach Ertz? I know you mentioned
Well, and
he
that's
was there.
another thing. Nick was far more, I'm going to keep situations private, conversations private, which he always says. For some reason, he's really scaled back this season. I don't know if he's feeling the pressure or whatever, but he's really scaled back. We talked about the injuries, talk about stuff like that, keeping stuff private. How much respect he has for Zach. He called him. He Zoom called him to apologize. All that stuff. And he sort of non-confirmed, confirmed it. Again, didn't want to talk about the conversation. Where Zach was talking and completely, completely shut it down because he's got common sense and said, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I have tremendous respect. Same type of thing. We talked it over. It's done. Nothing to it. So Zach completely shut it down in Washington. He's the player. Why can't the coach do that here? I don't know. That's a fair question.
Nick's got to do a better job at that, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of it.
I think to be honest, I think we're talking about it too much. And from my perspective, it's not that big of a deal other than he's creating problems for himself, which never helps. Joe Torre taught me that. Said, treat people with respect and they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's a big thing, especially, and I bring up Joe for a reason because he was the leader of an even higher profile franchise that, you're getting shit on constantly if you don't win every single year,
Everything's
every single day.
magnified.
And Nick has that in the NFL with the Eagles, similar, not quite as high, but somebody like that, he should take advice from. I'm not saying he hasn't. I'm not saying Joe talked to him. But he should realize, he studies. He talked about studying Steve Kerr recently from the NBA, some of the things in his culture. Act professionally, treat people nicely, fairly, which he does. I'm not trying to say he doesn't for the most part. And they will give you the benefit of the doubt. It's really nothing more than common sense.
John, what'd you see out there at Eagles practice? Were you down there yesterday as well, right? At NovaCare Complex?
Yeah.
Anything stick out at practice? I know you had Tanner McKee out there. You had Ian Book out there, Johnny Matt. Anything stick out from practice yesterday, or just kind of the usual here in Eagle Land?
No, normal in season practice. We're only out there for 10, 15 minutes, so we get to see stretching, little individual work. We did get to see Kenny with the black jacket on, was talking with Tom Hunkley, who's the head trainer, trying to, I guess, figure out what the best. He's got extra padding where the ribs are bothering him the most, so they're trying to figure out the best way to handle things. But as he said, he spoke after practice. It was basically, yeah, they hurt, but something he's got to play through, and there's no doubt that he is going to play. So they just got to figure out how to make him as comfortable as possible. As you can imagine, ribs, not the first quarterback to deal with a rib problem. So, and he's a veteran. So, and he played through it last week. So, and he did mention he had a different rib injury in the past. So he's had some experience with it. Yeah, quarterbacks are tough, man. They take a lot of hits.
We'll expect to see Kenny Pickett back out there this weekend, see how he does, unless Jalen Hurts somehow clear. I guess when is the final day, John, that Jalen could clear the protocol? Is it Saturday?
Yeah,
or is it all the way up to
it's all the way up to
11
game
on
time,
Sunday?
but
Okay.
you have to the last part of the protocol is you have to go through a certain amount of contact, as they call it. Typically, they don't have any contact on Saturday, but they did it purposefully to get Lane Johnson through the protocol at one point. Didn't work, but they tried it. So yeah, they could take it through Saturday. And if he's able to be out there today, there'll be some hope. I don't think they're even considering it, to be honest. And that's just my feel. Because again, Parsley is the opponent. I'm not going to downplay that, even though they would never admit it. And we talked about how limited Dallas is at the current time. I think they see it as an opportunity to also get that finger right, or at least calm down a little bit. I think that's the bigger deal. Long term. And by long term, I mean for the playoffs. And they kind of know the Giants are in the background. So, and if you look at all these analytics numbers, they might have a 2% chance. I've seen as high as 5% chance to get the number 1 seed. You really want to push that for that kind of percentage.
Yeah, right.
So I think that's where they are.
Good stuff there, John. Eric Dickerson had a comment about Saquon Barkley. Basically said, I don't think he's going to do it. And if you're asking me, do I want him to do it? Well, the answer is of course not. I don't think Saquon's going to get there, John. I think that conversation has been shelved, and I think rightfully so for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't even. I say it all the time. It's like, I don't care about individual.
Yeah, but it did feel like, John, for a little bit there was a sentiment, even inside the locker room, like they wanted that. They wanted that. Saquon spoke.
Yeah, I think the offensive lineman. I talked to Jordan about it a couple of weeks ago, and he said, yeah, he doesn't care about being an All-Pro, but he'd like to get that record because of its history, and it's an historic moment. All-Pro is a great season, but it's not historic. There's All-Pros every year.
Yeah.
That would be an historic moment. It would be cool. Everybody acknowledges that it would be cool.
Now, Abe says 268, but John, how much do you put into the caveat? Eric did it in 16 games. Saquon would be doing it in 17.
Yeah, I mean that will be a deal right now, but because Eric broke O.J. Simpson's record, who did it in 14 games. So, and that was a big deal at the time, and now nobody talks about it. So years down the road, I think it would be the classic Roger Maris asterisk at first, and then people would forget about it as the years went on. But yeah, I mean, it's easier, obviously, if you have an extra game. That factors into it. But it's also a different game, and the running game isn't as big a part of football as it typically is. So in a lot of ways, it's even more impressive to do it in this era, where it's become more of a passing league. So it depends how you look at it, but either way, it's an impressive feat. Either way, he's had a historic season from an Eagles standpoint, and if they were the Cowboys, I would say go for it at all costs, but they're not. They're trying to win the Super Bowl. And, the worst thing you can imagine, I would think, is that you're trying to break this record against the New York Giants with nothing other than breaking the record on the line, and he gets hurt. I mean, I'm not.
I don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't legislate injuries, and I say that all the time, but you don't. I mean, they have bigger goals, and if it happens organically, great. If it doesn't, who cares?
I don't think it happens. I don't think it happens. Not because I don't think Saquon can have 268 in 2 games. If he goes for 150 this weekend, they're going to win the game, and then they're not going to play him in Week 18, right?
Yeah, I would think. Why would you want to?
Yeah,
and people said, "Well, play a half and
one
see
game
where
to do it.
Play a half and see where it is." I don't understand this mentality at all. Remember, if he's playing, he's not playing behind Jack Driscoll and Nick Gates.
Right, you're playing the whole line.
Red Johnson. You got to play the whole offensive line. You got to, you can get out of playing the quarterback, but in theory, actually, maybe you can't because he'll be past the concussion protocol. I guess you could blame it on the finger injury and just have Kenny Pickett hand it off to him. Yeah, I don't get anybody who wants that to happen. I really don't. And I don't think Saquon cares. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, of course he's a human being. Of course he wants the record, but you know, you saw it. Who knows? The first time they played the Giants, we sat in the fourth quarter, and Nick, the
Right.
famous viral video, asked him, "Do you want to break the franchise record?" And he said, "Nah, don't worry about it." Who knows? Maybe if he did that, he'd be in a position to pass it. But he is a very selfless player. He doesn't tend to.
Yeah.
So as I said, if it happens organically, great. You know, what if he breaks Adrian Peterson's record for the single game rushing record the same day he beat? Now that would be historic. You know, because in theory they're going to be a run heavy team against the Cowboys, and even I'm a little worried about that because I'm at the point where I'm giving Kenny Gainwell more touches to prepare him for the playoffs.
Absolutely.
But that's me. But so many people want it. I had somebody I put just a quick video up of Quinyon Mitchell doing individual drills, and one of the replies was, "Oh God, I hope he wins Defensive Rookie of the Year." And I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Why? Who cares? I don't know, but I guess fans take a lot of pride in that. Um, and he's going to play. I'm not saying Quinyon's not going to, but in week 18, I'm not playing anybody if there's nothing to play for.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's icing. Those things are icing on the cake. Those are icings and cherries on top. I mean, you want meat and potatoes. You want wins. You want team success, and playoff success. That's at least what I
And
want as a
and
fan
and
of the
it's a
team.
sliding scale for me. Like if you're an 8-7 team, if you're a 9-7,
Right. Then that stuff becomes a little bit more. You
yeah,
want it a little bit more. Right.
yeah. For this team, no, no. I'm preparing for the playoffs.
No doubt about it. I'm with you there, Johnny Mac. Good stuff. We'll get to got a super chat here that we'll get to. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for being here this morning, man. We missed you guys the last couple of days, Johnny Mac. The people were reaching out to me. They missed us, Johnny Mac. They missed the best Philadelphia Eagles show on the planet on YouTube in the morning. So we are back officially here on this Football Friday. We'll have the game on Sunday versus the depleted Dallas Cowboys. We'll talk a little bit more about that. No CD Lamb. Who's catching passes over there for the Cowboys? Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson. Is the defense going to go to sleep? We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. No Limit checks in. He says, McMullen, any chance we get Shaq Barrett? Johnny Mac, what do you think?
Yeah. That's keep an eye on that. Yeah, there's some smoke to that fire.
Yeah. So what they do? They released him the other day. And now he's going to get through
Miami,
waivers today.
finally released him. He's got to clear waivers today.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, if I'm a playoff team, in front of the Eagles on the waiver wire, I might because I think he's got a $7 million contract, so it's not a ton of money, and that's prorated. I might claim him just to keep him away from the Eagles. But his agent's Drew Rosenhaus, and that factors into it as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure Drew has told people he ain't playing, so you better not claim him. Clearly, he came back with a team in mind. Now, everyone assumes in the league that's the Eagles. It still could be Tampa. Remember, they're a playoff level team, and he has a history there, a significant history there. He has a home there. But from all the whispers, it's how we talk this guy out of retirement, and how is he going to finagle to get him because Miami was playing hardball, and it's one of those things where it's a loophole, and it's probably not the best thing in the world, but the NFL probably wants to address this at some point. It's like the buyout market in the NBA, which is crap, but it's turned into a thing. How he did it a couple of years ago with Linval and Ndamukong Suh. Yeah, keep an eye on that one. It is legitimate, and he's a good player, and he's still got a very good season last year. It was a surprise retirement. It wasn't like, oh, this guy's at the end of his rope. He
Right.
can't play. He is a big time pass rusher. People that remember him in the playoffs, he has had some big time moments in some big games. And this is a player that could help him. So yeah, there's smoke to that fire.
Yeah, we'll see where Shaq Barrett ends up going. John, any update on the Eagles' edge rushers? Will Bryce Huff return this week?
Yeah, and Vic was talking about Bryce Huff and noted that he's in the middle of his 21-day practice window. They started it last Wednesday, so this will, he's past 7 days now. He's got a big cast. Vic noted he only worked in individual drills last week, so they're giving him a ramp up period. I asked Nick about him yesterday. Of course, he wouldn't give more clarification. So he's coming. I don't know if it's this week or next week, but they only have 21 days. So, but he's going to be activated at some point. So in theory, you could have Bryce Huff and Shaq Barrett.
I got to get him activated this week. What are we waiting on here? Is it an injury thing? I need him to get acclimated before the playoffs if I want him to contribute or play any meaningful snaps.
No, he's been out. He's been out for a long time. It's, he's got a cast. They're trying to work him back up, ramp, but not everybody comes off and gets activated right away. That's why you have 21 days.
Yeah, I just mean with the time. It's not, you're not in week 8, right? I mean, you're in week 16.
Well, no, he's not either way. He's not going to get tons of playing time before the playoffs. So, but yeah, there's a chance he's activated this week. It might be next week, but he's going to be activated. It's just a matter of when.
Good stuff there, John. One other question here on the Shaq Barrett, on getting through the waiver wire here, and it's my man Philly Don in the chat. Just clarify this for us, John. Philly Don says if he gets claimed by someone, he won't be able to play until 2025. What is the deal there? He just doesn't want to play for a team, right? Like, what if the Eagles, for example, claimed him on waivers? Would he not play here because he wants a new contract? Or like what? Why is he so adamant to get through waivers versus just getting claimed by the right team?
Well, he wants to get through waivers because he wants to specifically play for one team, which some people have speculated is Philadelphia. It might, as I said, still don't rule out Tampa, but excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here, but so that's just about, in other words, if, pick a playoff team, Atlanta or somebody on the cusp of the playoffs claims him. He doesn't want to play there. So I'm sure Drew Rosenhaus is making them very clear that, he's not going to play for you. So you better stay off. And, certain agents, and Drew's one of them, have more power than people would presume, like Scott Boras in baseball or somebody like that. So the I think he signed a $7 million. So it's not a huge deal. As I said, it wouldn't be prohibitive for somebody to claim him, but I don't think anybody's going to claim him because Drew has made it very clear, and he sat out the whole season. So what's sitting out another couple weeks? He's not going to play. He's not going to play for you while you're wasting your time. So the hope is to get him where he wants to go, whether that's Philadelphia or Tampa. And once you get through waivers, I think it's going to happen pretty quickly.
Good stuff there. For those who are asking whether Tampa is in the hunt, so here's the breakdown right now for the NFC playoffs. All right. The Lions have clinched, the Eagles have clinched, the Vikings have clinched, and the Packers have clinched. Okay, you have 3 playoff spots remaining. The Rams look like they'll get in. Now, they're currently at an 86% chance to get in. If they win, they're all but in with a greater than 99% chance of in. If they lose, they still have a 58% chance. So it looks like the Rams will have a good chance to get in. Now, the Falcons and the Bucs are kind of the other two. where it could switch because the Falcons are at a 55% chance. They currently lead the NFC South. Now, they play the Commanders this weekend, John. So if the Commanders, who are also fighting, but they're going to get in this weekend. If the Commanders stay hot, then the Falcons will ultimately potentially lose that game. The Bucs play the Panthers, who've been playing better of late. If the Bucs win, they'll move into that spot in the NFC South. So it's kind of between the Falcons and the Buccaneers to get in there in the NFC South, and it's a toss-up. The Falcons have a little bit of a tougher schedule, so the Bucs are right there. They have Carolina this week, and then I forget.
Yeah, that was a big loss for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that was a huge loss, man.
Because they were in control. Now Atlanta's in control. Tampa Bay, I mean, but Washington's playing Atlanta, so that complicates things because Washington clinches a playoff berth this week with a win or tie, which, and a Tampa loss or tie. And they'll clinch. And Atlanta clinches the NFC South with a win over Washington and a Tampa Bay loss. But both teams can't lose, Atlanta and Washington, because they're playing each other.
Right.
So, yeah, Tampa's still in it.
Tampa's definitely still in it. And then the Rams are still in it as well. So the NFC playoff picture is shaping up right now. And it looks like the Eagles will get the 2 seed. Not locked in just yet, but it all but looks like the Eagles will get the 2 seed. And then we'll see what happens between the Lions and the Vikings. That NFC North, John, is just incredible.
It really is.
I mean, it's crazy.
It really is. As far as who's playing the best, the third place team might be playing the best going into the playoffs. Yeah. And we'll see because Minnesota plays Green Bay this week. And I know a lot of people don't believe in Minnesota because, my God, Sam Darnold's playing well. I mean, at what point do you just put up your hands and say, all right.
Will he turn to a pumpkin, though, John?
I don't think so. Why would he?
I don't know, man. The playoffs brings out a different beast.
It does. But, I mean, think about the skill position talent. People talk about the Eagles' skill position talent. There are other teams. I mean, they have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and Aaron Jones and they have a Baltimore. They have another good tight end and Josh Oliver. I mean, at what point do you say 13-2 is 13-2?
Yeah,
and I think,
right. Yeah,
and I think, we said 100 passer rating, like a record number of times. The consistency from week to week. I don't know. Anybody can have a bad game in a worse spot, but the assumption that he's not a good quarterback is a wrong one. It's a perfect. In fact, for young quarterbacks, it's a perfect example of don't make these declarative statements about young quarterbacks and saying they stink. Everybody needs a supporting cast. And if they get a supporting cast and they're put in the right position,
right,
and you have talent, special things can happen.
I think having the right coach is also a big part of that. So Kevin O'Connell's done a good job down there. A couple more things, and then we'll get to our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about this Eagles-Cowboys game. Who the hell is playing, everybody? We're going to have Kenny Flickett out there. We're going to have Cooper Rush throwing to Jalen Tolbert. I don't know what's going on in Philly this weekend. A 1 o'clock game, by the way. We were flexed from 4 to 1. Which
for Vikings Packers, which you can't blame the league for.
Cannot blame the league for that one, Johnny Mac. Dirty Air checks in. He says, we are talking about all-time NFL record. I'm torn. I can understand that, but Dirty Air, we got bigger goals, man. Bigger goals.
Yeah, way bigger goals. Like I said, if it happens organically, great, And if he has like a, what does he need, Zander?
Like 268, I think it is.
If he has like a 200 day, all right, maybe I'll entertain it. Maybe I'll say, all right, give him the first quarter, see what happens.
See, I don't know if I would. That's when I feel like you get bit in the ass and like, we're just 60 away.
That's where maybe you placate the players and because they want it. But yeah, I mean, if I'll tell you what, if I were a Bill Belichick type coach, if I were an old school coach, and I pretty much would be if I was I wouldn't even entertain it. I wouldn't even entertain it. I'd talk to him. I'd say, look, we got bigger goals.
And
I can't risk it.
We need you for those goals.
Yeah, I can't risk it. Because boy, would that be the worst case scenario. And again, you can't legislate injuries. You can't be scared to go outside. But I mean, at some point, you're just tempting bait. And if you're playing your superstars in a meaningless game with the playoffs looming the next week, because you're not going to have the number 1 seed. I mean, look what happened to AJ last year with the playoffs looming.
Right.
He's out of the game. Boom, your season's over.
Done. Not even a chance, by the way.
I don't care about it. And then my nature is I don't care about individual records. Everybody watches this show. I'm not a big stat guy. I don't give a shit. I acknowledge they care about it more than me. The players, certainly the fans do. So I got that mentality going in, and you got to guard against that. But I do think you have a selfless player. I think Saquon would understand. Again, if it's a 9-7 team, and 9-8, who cares? Go for it. You have Super Bowl aspirations. I'm not risking Saquon Barkley to stick it to the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'm not either. And I don't know where this
or
comes
for a
from.
bunch of people. By the way, if you do break it against the New York Giants, who are playing for the number 1 pick more than trying to win a game, you're going to have that group of people saying, "Oh, it's 17 games. It's the Giants who aren't even trying." So who cares?
I don't know why Mike says blow the division. Mike, I don't think anybody's saying that, dude. If we win this week,
the assumption is they win,
yeah.
and then they win the division.
Yeah.
If they don't win this week, they got to play.
Well, they're going to play. That's what I mean.
Nobody's saying blow the division.
Yeah, I don't know where Mike got that. Mike, I appreciate you, brother. I don't know where you got that. They're playing everybody this week that's healthy. Everybody is playing this week with the goal of winning the football game. And once you win the football game this week, you obviously go back to the drawing board and you rethink week 18 because you've already clinched the number 2. You've already clinched the division. And if there's no chance at the 1 seed, I don't think you risk that just to get a record. But good stuff there. We appreciate that. And Maurice Austin says, let's go Birds. Maurice, appreciate you being there, brother. We missed you. We missed everybody on Birds 365. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys for being in here. Don't forget to hit that like button for us. John, last thing I want to talk to you about before we hit our break. The Kansas City freaking Chiefs, John. They just keep freaking winning, dude. They keep winning. And my fears of a three-peat are now gaining major momentum.
Oh yeah, they're the best team in football. Which ironic, last year going into the playoffs they weren't. This year they are. And people talk about all the close games. Remember what they went through this season and losing all the playmakers. And all of a sudden they get DeAndre Hopkins, and now DeAndre Hopkins is playing a little bit like DeAndre Hopkins, not at his prime, but certainly still a good player. And, they get Hollywood Brown back, and all of a sudden Xavier Worthy doesn't have to be relied on. Now he can just be the explosive player he is. They don't even have Rashee Rice. He's not coming back. But all of a sudden they got playmakers. Pacheco's back. They can move the change. P. Ryan's a good receiving back, so they have a nice complement.
Yep.
Even Kareem Hunt they have. Patrick Mahomes is like Gumby. Doesn't matter if he gets hurt. He's back the next week. They got 2 great tight ends, Kelsey and Gray. They have a good offensive line, except left tackle. They struggled at left tackle. And DJ Humphries is out now. I think he's going to be back. But you still have Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Their interior and Joe Thuney. Their interior is tremendous. They might have the best interior in football. And obviously the defense is very good. Yeah, they look like a tough out, man.
I don't
It's
see it.
amazing.
I don't see who's going to knock them out. I mean, I think the Bills will have the best chance, in my opinion. But that defense,
It's amazing. It's amazing, that team. Andy,
if Andy Reid three-peats, will he become the greatest coach in NFL history?
you can make certainly the argument.
It'll be his fourth ring, and it would be the first three-peat in NFL history.
Yeah. And right now, if I had to pick a Super Bowl champion, it would be the Kansas City
Yeah,
Chiefs.
I think I'd have to be right there with you.
Yeah. Because, I can talk myself into Detroit, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Minnesota in the NFC. I can't talk myself in anybody. Baltimore can beat them, but Baltimore's Baltimore in the playoffs, and they've been inconsistent in the regular season. I mean, if you saw Lamar Jackson on Christmas, my God, they shut down the MVP race too quickly for the people that did. He remains the best player, but he hasn't done it in the playoffs. So
I like Josh. I think I'm leaning Josh right now in that convo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've had more team success, but
I think most of that's because of Josh. I don't think Josh has as good of a supporting cast as Lamar.
No, he doesn't. But if you just look at if you just look at numbers, and everybody's obsessed with numbers, I mean, Lamar's numbers are significantly better. And that's what MVP is. It's a numbers game.
Sure.
And he's already won 2, and this is by far his best season.
Has Josh won one too? Does Josh have an MVP too?
No, I don't believe so.
I thought he had one, but
I'd have to.
Yeah, they're 1-2. I think they're 1-2 in the NFL. Well, maybe not. Yeah, Mahomes is still out there. John, are we disrespecting Mahomes by not calling?
Yeah, he's not. Again, it's a numbers thing. I think everybody knows Patrick Mahomes is ironically the most valuable player in the NFL, but nobody knows he's not involved in the award, which is why I don't give a shit about awards, because they're all, like, who is literally the most valuable player in the NFL? Well, it's Patrick Mahomes, but you need numbers to support it to win the award for certain years. So I don't think it matters, same as Saquon and the rushing record. But yeah, I mean, so Lamar won it in 2019 and 2023. He threw in 2019, he had 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,127 passing yards, and 1,200 more on the ground. He doesn't run as much now. 2023 at 36-78, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. This year he's at a career high already, 39-55. 39 touchdowns versus 4 interceptions. 39 touchdowns versus 4 interceptions. Plus, he's got 852 yards on the ground. Just past Michael Vick to be the top quarterback rusher in NFL history. He's already won it twice, and this is his best season. So
it is pretty insane what Lamar Jackson is doing in the NFL. Lamar, Josh, Patrick, some good quarterbacks in the NFL, man. A lot of good stuff there. Let's get to our first commercial break. I appreciate all of you guys for being here today. I did want to talk to John about the Chiefs, because they're now winning more convincingly, and I think they look better now than they have at any other point in the year, which is a scary thing to say on December 27th. But we will see. Let's go take a commercial break. When we get back, we're diving into Eagles versus Cowboys, Week 17. Cooper Rush versus Kenny Pickett.
Wow, just how we all drew it up.
Not quite confirmed yet, by the way. I'm picking that somebody asked, is Jalen definitely out? He's not definitely out. He still technically has an opportunity to clear the concussion protocol and potentially play. I don't think so that he will, but that's just an opinion. That's not confirmed yet. So we will keep you posted on that with what happens there. Let's get to our commercial break. We appreciate all of you guys for listening. Before I get there, I want to tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa and use the promo code you see on your screen. It's YouTube150. Gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody, on Birds 365.
Ignite your nights with